Win big with new DRF All Access Past Performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code ONEFREEPP for a free single card today.
Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at the feature race at Santa Anita on Sunday, race number 7. We're going downhill about 6.5 for the California Flag Handicap. Before we take a look at the field, remember 10% off DRF Past Performances. Shop now by accessing the QR code on your screen. Use the coupon code DRFTV10. Here's the field for the California Flag Handicap. Some very dependable horses were before early scratches. 9 entered in here. And you've got a speed and fast buck, and you've got a closer in Johnny Padres, and they both fit very well.
And you stole my thunder. I mean, they're the main 2 names on paper when you look at the field, Dan, but their running style is completely different. But I think the thing that they both have in common is they have something to prove off their last out efforts. They're really going to need to step up, and maybe this just is a case of regrouping. You're against Calibreds. You're, not at the graded stakes level, and this might be the right setup for both of them.
Let's take a look at the Time Form US pace projector for this race. Fastbuck's fast, and Fastbuck might get the lead in a Time Form US situation that favors front runners, and I'm not sure that was the case in his last race, the Eddie D, where the pace was very fast against open horses. He's getting blinkers back on, and if he controls a slow pace, he could be very tough to reel in.
Yeah, Boss Sully and Noble Reflection, sort of, pressed him in the Eddie D, and I think if he gets loose in here, that's very dangerous for everyone else in the field, especially at the 6.5 furlong trip. I just think if he's out there by himself, he's been a type of horse that in the past he can set reasonable fractions regardless of the distance. We saw it a lot back in May of 2023, and he could just be a big challenge and a menace to these other runners.
Johnny Padres will kick late. So should the 8, None Above the Law, who has the fastest Time Form US late pace rating. Johnny Padres is already a multiple stakes winner going down the hill at Santa Anita this year. He's coming off a 6th place finish in the Eddie D. Let's watch that replay. Fastbuck was in that race. Fastbuck's on the lead, turning for home. Johnny Padres is down towards the inside, and he's going to try to rally through a seam. And while he's never technically stopped, I wonder if he's really at his most comfortable. Poor Fastbuck is just being swamped right now after being doing all the dirty work.
Yeah, different trips, right? We talked about their running style, and Johnny Padres still does his thing. But I think when you look at that performance compared to the 5 ace that he got on the Del Mar turf course, just very different. He had a more of an outside draw. He was able to roll on the outside, and he almost got the job done over Matoria, who we've talked about before, as a very game runner and a horse that could be a big threat here in a couple of weeks out at Del Mar. But my concern with Johnny Padres in this spot is just where he draws. I don't necessarily love him on the inside, but I talked about it. I think he gets the class relief. If there's some pace in front of him, he'll be rolling late, and I expect him to take a huge step forward off of what I thought was a disappointing effort last time out. I loved him in that spot. I backed him, and didn't come out a winner, that's for sure.
I generally like horses cutting back in distance when they go down the hill, and Barely Functional has been competing in route races recently. This will be his 3rd start of the form cycle. His last race, however, just kind of was a little disappointing, going a mile at Del Mar. I wanted to see a little bit more of a stretch punch in that open first level allowance. I'm just not sure he's the best closer in this race. He is tactical enough that if he breaks sweetly and the pace isn't fast, he can stay close.
Yeah, I'm just concerned the pace is still going to be too quick for him, and maybe he'll have to adjust to a mid-pack trip. But I thought his performance in the Crystal Waters before he went on the shelf was a pretty game second behind Kings River's Knight, who is certainly a hard-trying type of horse to beat. And he was not even looked at. Barely Functional was over 60-1 in that spot. And I agree with you. I would have liked to seen a little bit more back on September 7th at Del Mar. We haven't seen that. He is going to cut back in distance. And his one try on the downhill, it was okay. Boss Sully ended up coming back to win his next out effort, and it was a first level allowance. But again, he's been able to take a step forward in terms of numbers, but he just didn't do it for me last time out.
The 3 is hacking it up, and he really put it all together at a huge price last time out, turning back from a route to a 3/4 of a mile sprint at Santa Anita and getting blinkers for the first time in a while. I was stunned at how close he was to the pace while cutting all the way back in distance, and he was game in the stretch. Maybe he's a new horse, and he has a little bit of back class. He was a stakes winner at Golden Gate earlier in his career.
Yeah, I guess the question is where did that race come from? Kind of looking at his prior turf efforts, Not great for a majority of them. Really, you have to go back to the race at Golden Gate to find a win, and then since then, a lot of them were just not great performances. And just to see what he was able to do, I think the cutback, it was just maybe just the cutback in distance and having those fast fractions. He's going to have that in front of him. A little bit of a different ball game on the downhill. I think the one thing that we don't really know is how he's going to fare sprinting against stakes competition. He hasn't done that to this point in his career.
Last call London, the number 4, made his turf debut last time out. He broke from the rail going 5/8 at Del Mar and encountered some traffic in that race. He was a good 2-year-old. He was very precocious. I just wonder if he's improved significantly since his 2-year-old campaign, or if he just plateaued as an early season juvenile. He's got a lot to prove in my eyes.
Yeah, he's a tough horse for me to endorse. You just mentioned kind of his resume this year. He's 0 for 6. He hasn't been strong in his last 3. And I understand, he just tried the turf for the first time. He was able to close, but he faced $45,000 claimers and going 5/8, 46 to the half, in my opinion, at Del Mar. That's not really motoring. So it makes me question what he really faced in his last out effort. And you talked about it, even going back to the form that he had last year as a 2-year-old. Um, there's just things to be desired in his performances. I remember when he went off favorite at Santa Anita on the 13th of January to kind of kick off his 3-year-old campaign. He wasn't able to do it at a mile and a 16th, and the fractions weren't all that quick for him early on. So I just have never known what to make out of him. And based on the one turf try, I can't endorse him here.
A lot of different things going on for the 5. Big Bethofen Safa, a horse that's turning back in distance, who's stepping up in class. I'm just not sure sprinting is really his deal. He's been competing mostly in route races. His 2 sprints have been okay, but it's been too little too late. And if the pace isn't fast and he's got a long way to come, it might be too much to overcome.
Yeah, it is interesting to see when you go to the win 3 starts back that they say, okay, we're going to go from a mile to a mile and 3/8.
Yeah.
He does nothing at a mile and 3/8. And I know there, he got placed up to 8th in there, but he was still well defeated. And then they went back to a mile and a 16th. And I think looking at the fact that in the mile and a mile and a 16th, they've said he's been able to close, maybe that's why they're going to try something new and hope for different results. I just wonder if 6.5 is a little too bit of a drastic cutback with the way the downhill plays. I really don't know what to make out of him. And he was still beaten. He was a big price last time out. And again, he's taking a step up.
I don't mind the 6 on the whim cutting back in distance. He's won sprinting in the past, and he's shown enough tactical speed to stay within stalking range. He won the California Dreamin' with a beautiful trip and ride 2 starts back on the turf against Calabreds, going 2 turns. Here's his most recent start. This is a first level allowance going a mile at Del Mar. On the whim is on the outside, turning into the stretch. He's going to churn on to finish 3rd. I think he's in good form. If he could run back to that Beyer speed figure from 2 back, he is a strong contender at a price.
Absolutely. I think outside of the big 2, he's probably the 3rd horse on paper and has a little bit more upside, right? He's just raced 8 times in his career compared to Fastbuck, compared to Johnny Padres. And he's been interesting to watch. He didn't really get started until late as a 3-year-old. I think he started pretty good, especially in the turf. They've certainly ruled out the dirt for him. That hasn't fared well. And I just felt like in the spring, he kind of, I don't know, cooled off a little bit. And he's gotten better in his last 2. I know they've been going back to now, stretching him out from those 2 poor efforts at 6.5. I just think he's maybe matured a bit. I like what we've seen. And again, I know his 6.5 as of recent aren't great, but when he started at 6.5 furlongs, he was very strong on debut. So I think with the way he's trending, there's some potential for him to maybe score an upset here.
7 Fast Buck is the horse to catch, and he might be the horse to beat. He wired them in the Grade 3 Daytona going down the hill last year when able to make an easy lead. He might get that scenario here, and I think you can make excuses for all 3 starts this year. Off the layoff, A, he had to deal with the layoff. B, he couldn't get forward after not breaking very well. In the Green Flash, he didn't break well again, and then was just sort of bottled up in the pocket. He finally was able to show his speed last time out. I think that competition was a little bit too tough for him. This is just a tailor-made spot.
Absolutely. And I actually don't mind his first effort off the long layoff. He actually passed horses. That's not really his style. And sometimes when you see a horse off a long layoff, they want to go. And he really didn't want to go out of the gate like he typically does. So he's been able to show that speed. He showed it last time out. Yes, he was defeated, but he went very quick in there. We're almost talking 43 and change to the half. I don't think they'll necessarily go that quick. You see the blinkers came off. Now they go back on. And you've already said it, Dan. If he gets an easy lead in here, I think this race is over, because when that has happened in the past, he's just able to keep on going, and he gets very bold on the front end.
Talk about a turn back in distance and a drop in class. The 8 none above the law is cutting back from a mile and a quarter after running in the Grade 1 Pacific Classic. He's hit the board in this race the last 2 years. He's a very honest sort. You always have to worry that he could be outrun early going 6.5, especially cutting back from 10 furlongs. But he's, again, going to kick on in the stretch. He's going to give a good performance as he usually does. He's got plenty of back class. He was a graded stakes winner way back in the day.
Yeah, I just kind of struggle with, the chances of him winning a race like this. His win was on the dirt at Los Al, and that's been his only win in quite some time. You have to go back to 2021 to find the other wins. And, he certainly pays his bills and he does his thing. And I think you look at the race even after his win, the California Dreaming, he raced very well on the win. We saw was able to kind of win that performance and did things the right way. And this horse tried to close from almost dead last and just missed by a length and 3/4. I thought ambitious last time out, obviously going in the Pacific Classic. They took a shot. He beat a pair in there. It's just been a long time since we've seen him sprint. And the last time we saw him at 6.5, Johnny Padres won.
The 9 is So I'm Told, and he's got a lot to overcome. 2-month layoff, stepping way up in class after finishing off the board going 5/8. But it is worth noting, his best race was the one time they tried him down the hill. He paid $20 that day when he won. He has speed, but I'm not sure chasing Fast Buck, having to reel him in, and if he does, holding off the closers is the most ideal trip in the world.
Yeah, I think if you're So I'm Told, you have the benefit, you have the outside position. Fast Buck's going to go, and you're probably chasing Fast Buck. When he's chased in the past, I will say at least So I'm Told has been able to hang around. It's always been against lesser competition, though. So I think when I started to look at him, I thought at best he would be sort of muddling the exotics and just being a little bit of a menace to Fast Buck. I don't know how much of a menace. I just think Fast Buck is faster, but at least he could maybe just stick around. But the only turf effort that we've seen as of late is 5/8. You have to go back to May to find the mile event. It was a similar sort of situation where he was able to chase and hold on. He's got to stretch out, and he's had a little bit of time off.
Let's take a look at our top selections for the California Flag on Sunday at Santa Anita. You're going Fast Buck. I'm going Johnny Padres. I'm going to have to spot you several lengths turning for home.
Yeah, maybe not my most, challenging or thoughtful preview here, but I think on paper, when I looked at this race, Dan, Fast Buck and Johnny Padres are the horses to beat. Very different running style. My concern is that Johnny's going to have too much work to do and Fast Buck is going to get an easy lead. And I think from here, we had the similar thought process. The 6 on the whim is probably maybe a little bit of an upset factor, has some potential. And then from there, it was wide open. And I made the case for the 9 maybe sticking around. So like I said, maybe not the most detailed analysis, but I think the big 2 look to be the main 2.
I agree. Ashley's going 7-1-6-9. I'm going 1-7-6-8. The California Flag could come down to pace and trip luck.
Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com race of the days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.